My employee keeps getting dead-named by a coworker. I have managed John, a transgender man, for about 2 years. John does not keep his transgender status a secret, but he also doesn't go out of his way to tell people, so some people know and some don't. Lizzie recently transferred to a department that works closely with ours. She previously did not know that John was trans, but now that she's interacting with him much more often, she's found out. At first, she didn't seem to have an issue with it, but then she discovered some articles he'd published while still going by Sally, and now she insists on calling him Sally. She claims that she has no problem with trans people, but that she feels it's important to call John by the name he was given at birth, out of respect for his mother. John's mother does not work for our company, and to the best of my knowledge, she and Lizzie have never met. John and I have both asked her to stop, but she refuses. On John's request, I have also gone to her manager, but Lizzie has a very domineering personality, and her manager avoids confrontation, so I don't think he's said anything to her. Not only is Lizzie's insistence on dead-naming John offensive, it is confusing, because many people don't understand who she's talking about when she mentions Sally. I've tried casually correcting her in the moment, as if I thought she was making a mistake, and John has outright refused to answer to the name Sally, but she keeps saying that it's disrespectful to his mother to use a name she didn't choose for him. John complained to HR, but they said that because she is not explicitly harassing him for being trans, they can't do anything. For the record, our state did not consider being LGBT a protected class, though from what I understand, the Supreme Court ruling should have changed that. John has now started exclusively calling Lizzie Elizabeth. There is another Elizabeth in the office, and if there's any confusion over which Elizabeth he's talking about, John uses Lizzie's maiden name rather than her married name. Lizzie hates this and has complained to him, me, and half the office, but he says that it's out of respect for her mother. Honestly, I think this is hilarious and kind of want to start doing it too. But I feel that as a manager, I shouldn't encourage John to deliberately antagonize Lizzie, even though she started it, and definitely shouldn't join in. However, it does seem extremely unfair to tell John that not only does he have to put up with Lizzie using his dead name, he has to use her preferred name. Do I have to tell John to knock it off? Is there anything more I should do about Lizzie? Update 1. Hearing from Allison and all of the commenters made me realize that I needed to talk to John about what he wanted to do. I apologized to him for not being proactive enough with this problem and for underestimating just how offensive Lizzie's actions were, reiterated that I was on his side, told him that I was setting up a meeting with Lizzie and her manager for later that day, and asked what he wanted to do and what he wanted me to do. He admitted that although he was joking about it, he was actually really upset by Lizzie constantly dead-naming him. So in addition to needing her to stop, he would rather not work with her anymore, or at least work with her as little as possible. I also told him that I was willing to make a big stink about both Lizzie's actions and HR's inaction to my boss, Lizzie's grand boss, and the higher-ups in HR, but that I wanted to make sure he was comfortable with being explicitly identified as being transgender and experiencing transphobic harassment. He said he was worried about escalating the issue himself, because he didn't want to come off as pushy or overly sensitive, but that he did want me to do it. I took Allison's advice with Lizzie's boss and just checked his and Lizzie's Outlook calendars to find a time when they were both free and set up a meeting, figuring that his dislike of confrontation meant that he would go along with it. I said that Lizzie's offensive behavior towards John had gone on way too long and that she needed to immediately stop calling him any name other than John. She tried to say that she had no problem with transgender people. I had not mentioned anything about him being trans, only that she had to call him by his name, and that it was a matter of respect for his mother. But I interrupted her and said that John's mother and her feelings were irrelevant, and that she was being deeply disrespectful to John, who is actually her co-worker and thus actually needed her respect. I also said that it didn't matter how she felt about trans people, or if she didn't intend to be transphobic. Purposely calling John by his dead name was a transphobic action, and it needed to stop, and that until I could trust her to treat him with respect, she was not to attend any of our team meetings, and any workflow that would normally pass between her and John would go through me first, and I would pass on the information. Her boss spoke for the first time then, and said that that sounded like it might make us miss deadlines on some of our tighter turnarounds, which I agreed was true, but that given that Lizzie refused to use John's name, I felt I had an ethical duty to prevent her from speaking to him at all. Not to mention that allowing her to continue harassing him would open us up to litigation. I tried to say this all as matter-of-factly as possible, so it would be clear that I didn't care how Lizzie actually felt about mothers or trans people, and that I wasn't asking for suggestions on what should be done. After that meeting, I emailed my team and explained that due to Lizzie's outrageous and offensive behavior, I was changing our procedures so that she and John would no longer have direct contact, and that they should expect some delays in communication between her and our team. I also apologized for having allowed her to behave in such a blatantly transphobic fashion for close to a month, which should never have been tolerated at all, and explained that I had told her that she had to stop immediately. So if she referred to John as Sally again, they should let me know, either by forwarding me an email if it was in writing, or by documenting the incident if it were over the phone or video chat, and should also feel free to tell her that she was being offensive and needed to stop. This is when things get satisfying. My boss was included on the email to my team, and he called me about half an hour later asking about it. I hadn't told him much about the Lizzie situation because he has very little patience for people complaining about their interpersonal conflicts to their boss, and while this is a lot more significant than an interpersonal conflict, I thought he wouldn't want to hear about it anyway, especially since he doesn't have much contact with my team in normal times and has had even less while we've been virtual. Once I explained what had been happening, he said that was the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard, and set up a meeting for the two of us with the head of HR for the next day. I asked John if he wanted to come, and he said he'd rather not, and he trusted me to take care of it. The head of HR agreed that this was outrageous, and that HR should never have tolerated it. A week later, Lizzie got fired. Then the HR rep who had said this wasn't explicitly transphobic got fired about a week and a half later. Lizzie's boss had to go through some pretty extensive management training, and there's talk that he may transfer into a position without any direct reports. The entire HR department did training on LGBT issues, and what is now required of them, because of Bostock v. Clayton County, the entire company got an anonymous survey asking if we had ever been harassed or felt that we were the victim of discrimination in the workplace, and the head of HR personally apologized to John for the first HR rep's mishandling of the case and encouraged him to come to her if he ever felt harassed based on his gender identity. I also sent John the link to my original letter, and he told me to thank everyone for all your supportive comments. And of course I want to thank you all as well for giving me the confidence to escalate this situation the way I should have from the beginning. It's seeming more and more like Lizzie, her boss, and the first HR rep were problems, but that the company as a whole really is the good place to work that I'd always thought it was.